I guess, Bruce, you're right, it's a fait accompli. How about nominations for a vice chair?
I nominated you, so I'm not gonna do both.
As chair, I believe I'm not supposed to make a motion. But Brian, are you willing to serve as vice chair again?
I'll do it again.
So would somebody like to make a motion for Brian?
I'll nominate Brian for the position of vice chair.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a motion for Brian for vice chair by Justin Allison, seconded by Bruce DeLater. Let's go through and see all those in favor. Brian Leslie, well, you're going to be a yes, I assume.
I think I have to abstain.
We barely got a quorum. You got to be in on this.
Okay.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Justin, of course. All right, the status quo remains. Moving on. Staff update on council action revising waiver decision. Steve, I assume this is your game.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, thank you. Just wanted to bring it to the commission's attention that after much consideration and expressed interest by this commission, the committee met to discuss some methodologies relating to the waiver process and established a minor waiver process for sidewalk, curb, and gutter waivers. And through this process, it grants staff the ability to make decisions on minor waivers under certain conditions. One being that the property was previously platted. The second condition being that it is not in an established sidewalk improvement area, which was previously assigned by City Council. And the third would be that the applicant is willing to pay 25% of the total project cost into a fund that would be reappropriated, reallocated to the cost share sidewalk program for the city. So that was presented to council by the committee, and the committee voted and put that minor waiver process in place. I think this is going to be very helpful. It still sends all of the major waiver requests to the P&Z, and then also it would be the same process from the major waiver process would still go to P&Z and then to council for final approval. What this does is give staff some latitude and make some decisions relating to sidewalks, curb and gutters in areas that are really pretty straightforward on if they need to be in place or not. So I think it will alleviate a lot of the cases that are coming before the P&Z and also for the council, but only on those cases that are, as their name implies, very minor in nature. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Yes, I have one. Where, do we have a map of the area that is designated specifically for sidewalk and curb and gutter?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
Those are actually have been added as active layers on our GIS mapping system. And so if you're familiar with our GIS mapping system, there is a layer for that. It's primarily areas that are around schools and other areas of development in town that we felt needed sidewalks for those residential areas. I believe that was passed in February of 2019, and so it's been out there, and maybe it's not as readily known about as it should have been, but those areas are one of the requirements that the minor waiver request cannot fall within one of those designated areas.
So what would be an example of something that does fall? Like, for example, those properties that were like on North Dale, that we heard a couple months ago, would those count as minor or not?
Well, let me back up to another one that we just heard. It was actually in the neighborhood out adjacent to the golf course. That neighborhood has been in existence for, I'm guessing, a minimum of 40 years. There's not a single sidewalk in the entire neighborhood. There was a lot on the very edge of that development, on the periphery of this existing established neighborhood. No sidewalks, no curbs, no gutters. Or I'm sorry, they had curb and gutter, but no sidewalks. Sorry for that. No sidewalks. This gentleman was able to contribute 25% into the fund, and we granted the waiver for this particular sidewalk. This process took place, it was adopted and effective for March 1 of this year.
Okay, so the 25% that they're putting in basically allows them the opportunity to not have to put in curb gutter or sidewalk if that's the minor waiver is determined, correct?
Yes, ma'am, minor waiver. And staff will not have the authority to consider anything other than a minor waiver request. Everything else will go to P&Z as in the past.
Okay, and this begins immediately?
It was effective March 1 of this year.
Okay.
So obviously, we were wanting to share this information with you at the February meeting, but of course, that had to be canceled due to the inclement weather.
I thought this was the February meeting.
It's the rescheduled February meeting.
That's
Yes,
what
sir.
that's what I meant.
So the item that we're hearing today, would that be considered, the curb and gutter, would that be considered minor or major?
In this particular case, the applicant wanted to go before the P&Z. So,
You want to take a chance?
yes, ma'am.
Gotcha.
Also, this request was submitted, the application was made before the ordinance took effect.
Okay. Okay, just curious. Anybody else have questions?
Yes, could we, in the packet for our next meeting, could we have a map of those areas that are specifically designated as sidewalk zones?
Yes, sir, I can get that to you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, ready to move on?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
next item on the agenda is to consider the approval of minutes for December 16, 2020, but they are not part of this agenda packet. And to my knowledge, we haven't received them, correct? And anybody else?
Madam Chair, that
No.
is correct, and we're going to have to ask that we delay this item until the regularly scheduled meeting for March.
Okay. Moving on, then let's begin with case number RZ 2021-001. Applicant Key Waden Development, Taylor Canute, is requesting a rezone of property located at 751 Miller, parcel R32531, lot 8, lot 2, Miller addition to the city of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from B1 neighborhood business to B3 central business. B.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This particular case, and I've fielded a couple of questions regarding these two properties since we submitted the packet. So I hope to be able to answer those questions for you this evening. The comprehensive plan for these properties designates the future land use as single family. However, the parcels for these single-family designations do not meet the minimum dimension requirements for an R1 development. So an R1 development requires a 75-foot frontage and a 100-foot depth on the lot for a minimum square footage of 7,500 square feet. These lots do not meet those minimum requirements. And so with the B3 designation, one of the permitted uses, as you will see in your packet, permitted use number 40 does allow for a residential use in a B3 area, which is the applicant's request. With this B3 request and the permitted use, the applicant is wanting to actually build a single-family structure, and the single-family structure has a square footage that will allow him to meet the setback requirements required of a B3, and then also still meet he will not exceed the maximum coverage of the lot with this square footage for this particular parcel. So with that, staff has no objection to the B3 zoning request because it is a permitted use and it will allow him to meet the requirements of the setbacks and the minimum lot dimensions. The B3 designation requires that the lot have a dimension of 60 by 100, and this particular parcel if we look at the maps included in your packet, this particular parcel is the larger of the two parcels, and it has the dimensions to meet those minimum requirements of B3. The applicant, we do have the applicant's information in the packet for you as well. We have the maps showing the current zoning of the area, and then also the future zoning, which you can see is strictly R1 for the properties to the north, east, and south of this, with B2 to the west. There is water and sewer available. And Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation for this particular parcel, this particular report.
Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Canute here with us tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Canute, would you like to add anything?
I think Steve did a pretty good job of kind of laying out what our plan is. Like he mentioned, we have 2 floor plans that actually Fred Parker's office is currently working on. One of them is completed, and the other one is nearly completed. Like Steve said, they both fit within the side yard setbacks on these 2 parcels. And in fact, the smaller of the 2 lots, the pad on our floor plan is actually 34 feet wide. And to make it work the most efficient way possible, we're gonna keep that pad in theory as far over to the right setback as possible, so there'll be plenty of separation between the 2 houses on those parcels. We identified them not too long ago as a good use for single family, like Steve said. I think with the setting there, with the proximity to the Bosque River Trail, and the kind of undeveloped property behind it, it's we think a good spot for single family residential detached. So that's why we're applying for that.
Thank you. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Canute?
Yes, I do. I was under the impression that central business was a specific geographical area in the city, and this seems to lie far outside the central business district.
I think if you look at the description, it doesn't specify a specific location. The central business district is intended to encourage the redevelopment of the downtown business area, which includes the historic courthouse, all types of offices, retail business, and residences. The varying land uses include, it does specifically say the downtown business area. And I don't know if this
Just,
quite qualifies.
just,
Go ahead, Bruce.
just the name of the zone, since central business. And this lies far outside central business. Central business doesn't even extend down to the post office, and this is way beyond the post office.
Yeah. What, Mr. Canute, did you consider trying to zone this as an R1, but getting a variance for the size of the lot?
We considered that, and after initially introducing this to Steve and looking up the different zoning ordinances, we thought it would be more efficient just to go to B3 because, again, the lots are both below 7,500 square feet, and there would be, I think, in that case, we would probably have to get more than one variance. In this instance, we're still able to build a single-family dwelling on both lots, and just request one variance for the smaller lot that is 50 feet wide. So it just seemed like the most efficient way to go about it, as opposed to rezoning to a residential.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Canute?
Madam Chair, if I may, I did leave out one piece of information that I think will be beneficial to the commission in this decision, and that is for an R1 zoned property, the minimum square footage of the main structure would be 1,500 square feet. And when we're looking at a lot size, smaller lot size in this area, first of all, these lots don't even meet the requirements of an R1 designation for a future land use. So in that respect alone, it's an error. And secondly, based on the floor plan that Mr. Knut has for this lot, if we go with the B3 zoning, it's reduced to a 1,000 square foot minimum for the main structure. And therefore, he has a smaller structure that he can build to be compliant with the zoning and allow for a greater setback on the property itself, and not get so crowded with the adjacent properties.
Okay, and Steve, what do you have to say regarding the location of the central business district? Does that not bother you?
So the zoning classifications were established prior to my arrival, and I mean, we have B2 zoning, B3 zoning across the city in different pockets across the city. So as far as our comprehensive plan, that's something we probably need to look at as we begin to reevaluate that. But under the existing zoning, this is exactly what the city has in place at this time.
Okay, thank you. And does any of the other commissioners have a question for Mr. Knut or Steve?
Might I make a suggestion that we recommend to the city council that B3 zoning receive a different name?
How about we put a pin in that, Bruce, and let's finish up this decision, and then we can come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and open up a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone? All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Commissioners, we need a motion on this so that we can discuss it.
I move that we approve RZ 2021-001 to the, let's see.
And I'll second.
Okay, so that's a motion by Brian and a second by Justin to approve. What do you guys think? What's everybody's thoughts? Are you okay? I don't like that it's spot zoning. I don't like it that it's two little guys that don't match the others. I don't like that it's not R1 if that's the direction that that's going, but I recognize the logic of this guy just wants to build these houses and this is the easiest way to do it. What do you guys think? Do you think it's...
Well, I look at the map that we were provided, and there's several other addresses on that street that actually appear to be smaller than this parcel. And I know some of them are occupied, and there are structures located there. So would they then be in non-compliance with the current zoning, or I don't know. I don't understand.
That's kind of my concern too, is that when you look at the map, you're looking at the other adjacent properties, and they're all either the same size or a little smaller for the next 3 or 4 addresses to the south. And going by the minimum square footage restrictions, it kind of puts them in a box.
We've talked about this before, this problem that our R1 has this 1,500 square footage minimum. And we talked, I don't know if you all were on here when we had this discussion, that it was years ago, but we talked about creating another, like a 1.5 that would be for smaller square footage. So an R1.5 that would allow for a smaller square footage print. That seems like something that could work here. And I know a lot of the builders have complained in the past when they want to revitalize some of those downtown areas that they can't put in 1,500 square foot buildings into those tiny lot sizes.
Right.
And this seems to me like just one of those areas. But are we budgeting together a solution?
I mean, the only other solution would be to have somebody with some deep pockets buy 2 lots and replat it. And then you get your square footage that you gotta have.
Yeah.
But that's not feasible for a lot of people to either, so.
Yeah. And I don't want to hold
Yeah, I
up you
think-
guys' development either.
I think
but,
it's a decision that council might have to address later on for these smaller properties. Might be something that we come back and evaluate later. But for this, I think, since it's gonna be a single-family residence that he's trying to put in, and it matches the future land use, go ahead and stick with what it is that he has proposed.
I suppose I don't have a problem with that, but then I guess kind of an addendum to what Bruce was saying earlier, we maybe need to address council, I have that idea of, we need to have a zoning that allows for some smaller houses to go in an R1 situation.
I was thinking that I recalled, probably about 2 years ago, while attending a city council meeting, that they had discussed reducing the size of the R1 designation down to 6,000 square feet and a 1,000 square foot house. Did the city council not pass that?
Now, there was discussions, but nothing ever happened.
Is that what it was? Okay. I just vaguely recall that from, like I say, about 2 years ago, and I thought we had done something about it. But last year I was an alternate, so I didn't get to attend all the meetings.
No, we didn't discuss this last year at all. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this, and then we can see if we need to wrap this up with any further discussion. So the agenda, or the motion on the table is to recommend to council approval of rezoning this property from RZ 2021-001 751 Miller from B1 to B3. The motion is to approve this rezone. Let's go through. Justin,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes?
Brian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that motion passes to council with our recommendations to approve.
Is it possible to make an additional motion that we attach a request to the city council to address these smaller lot sizes that we have in the city, like we tried to do a couple of years ago? Because we have a lot of those lot sizes in Stephenville that do not comply with current R1 zoning.
See, what's the appropriate mechanism for doing that?
Madam Chair, I believe if you would like that to be discussed at a council level, we would begin with the committee, have that item on the agenda for the committee, and then they will work for a solution and then present it to the full council for consideration.
Okay. Well, that works for me. Bruce, does that work for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just something that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your time.
Okay. Second item on the agenda is a related item, case number RZ 2021-002, applicant Waiver Development, Taylor Canute, is requesting a rezone property located at 751 Miller, parcel RG 2529, lot 8, lot 2, Miller addition to the city of Stephenville, U.S. County, Texas, from B1 neighborhood business to B3 central business. Steve, I assume you have nothing new to add?
Madam Chair, this will be very close to being identical to the first case. The exception here is that this lot is actually a little smaller. It's roughly 55 by 100, I believe. So almost the exact same consideration. The exception here, Mr. Canute made reference to in his earlier testimony, this will require, if it is rezoned to B3, this particular property will have to go before the Board of Adjustments for a variance consideration because the minimum lot size for B3 is 6,000 square feet. This particular parcel is around 5,500 square feet, so there will have to be a variance approved for this particular zoning.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Mr. Canute, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, once again, Steve, I think pretty much covered everything very accurately. This is just what I referenced earlier. with that lot being slightly smaller, we do have a floor plan that, again, will meet the 5-foot setbacks on each side, which is required under B3. And with the pad itself being 34 feet wide, we're going to be able to keep it over to the right side property line. And again, the whole point is just to keep separation between the houses to make it as ideal of a residential layout as we can get.
What's the square footage gonna be on that house?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
The square footage on the house itself?
This one is 1,779 square feet. It's a 2-story.
Is the other one a 1-story or a 2-story?
It's a 1-story. It's a range plan that's 1,490 square feet.
So it's just under, this
Yeah,
weekend?
it's
Okay.
almost there.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
What would be the footprint square footage?
Let me see, I have that. The footprint of the 2-story, the pad size is 34 feet by 46 foot 2 inches. So, I think the first floor
You guys
is,
hear me?
yes, I think might be frozen though.
She's froze.
The pad size, don't have it right in front of me, but I know the first floor square footage is 850, and I believe
Okay.
that's not including the garage, so pad size probably just a little bit over 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
Just hold on to it at least a while, because we need her for a quorum, so
Yeah.
we need to pause until we get her back.
Did Zoom dump everybody?
Okay, y'all, I apologize, my internet went out. I'm on my phone, we all still here?
I think so.
Anybody y'all just been waiting on me?
Yeah, without you, we don't have quorum.
I apologize. Okay, well,
Well-
I restarted on my phone, so we should be okay.
We need Justin too.
Is Justin here? Justin, you're there?
Okay, we're still in quorum.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button on here.
Okay, good, okay. I think we're here. I'm getting back, I'm on my computer and my phone, so we're just gonna stick with my phone and hope that that keeps us here. Okay, we there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I apologize for the, all right. Okay. Let's go ahead and open a public meeting. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone? All right, then we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, if I could get a motion, we could go ahead and vote on this.
I'll make the motion that it be approved.
Okay, that was Bruce making the motion, and who was making the second?
I'll second.
That sounded like Brian, am I right?
Yes, it is.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. So, the motion on the table is to approve, to recommend to council approving this rezone of the property located at 751 Miller, parcel R32529, lot 8, lot 2, from B1 neighborhood business to B3 central business. Justin?
Yes.
Yes, Bruce?
Yes?
Brian?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion goes through with a recommendation to council that that they approve that rezone. So, thank you, Mr. Canute. Your next stop is City Council.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. All right, the next item our agenda is case number RZ 2021-003. Applicant Jeff Brady is requesting a rezone of properties located at 1290 Hyman, parcel R33798, lot 4, 4A and 4C, block 35, Southside Edition, to the city of Stevens, West County, Texas, from R1 single family to R3 multifamily. Steve.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, thank you. This particular property, based on the comprehensive plan for future land use, is designated to be single-family. The applicant is requesting a rezone for a multifamily project, and they have requested this for 2 parcels, which are side-by-side in this particular neighborhood. The current zoning is R1, single-family, with future land use is also single-family. We have provided a copy of the requested zoning in your packet for your consideration. And then also, if we work through the packet, we have the applicant's request for your review, and then we also included the maps of the area. So you can see from this particular map how the property, this first case is outlined in the vicinity, and then we have the current zoning for this parcel and future zoning, which again is R1. If you look, there is, of course, water and sewer available on Hyman Street. I struggle with this particular request because of the comprehensive plan and the future land use designation, but it's also coupled with the fact that if we look at this particular map, there's a pocket of single-family homes that still exist on Hyman. Yes, they are surrounded by many multifamily properties, and I can certainly see how the plan, looking at this map, would make sense, because there was a multifamily property approved across the street from these parcels on Hyman. But when you look at the remaining properties along Hyman in this particular block, it's again one that I struggle with as far as how to proceed. So does it fit some of the other properties in the neighborhood? Yes. But considering the existing residential properties and the designation of future land use being R1, I would be inclined to deny this request. And with that, I'd be willing to answer any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve? It looks like we have Mr. and Mrs. Brady here tonight, is that correct? Would you care to say anything about this?
Sure. I could give a brief history. I originally purchased the property at 1270 Hyman with the house on it as a HUD auction property in 2012. And then I renovated that property, the house and the landscape, and rented it out. And then in 2019, the adjacent lot at 1290 West Hyman came up for auction at a sheriff's auction because it's a perennial code violation lot for mowing issues. So we purchased that lot at the sheriff's auction. We're thinking long term about what we would like to do with the 2 lots, and looking at similar sized lots in that neighborhood. It seems like most of them in the 1 acre or larger size are rapidly developed as apartments as highest and best use. And so we're thinking along those lines. We don't have specific plans drawn up yet. We're thinking long term, and we were thinking that might be the highest and best use as apartments.
So would you be looking to tear down the house at 1270 and combine those 2 lots into 1 parcel and build something there eventually?
Absolutely. The house at 1270 would be relocated or demolished if we do this.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the Bradys? Okay, go ahead and open, thank you, sorry, I appreciate your input. Let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone request? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone request? Okay, go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, I need a motion so that we can discuss.
I'll make a motion that we approve the request.
Okay,
I'll second.
and who was that making the second? Was that Justin?
Yes.
Justin made the second. Okay, discussion? What do you guys think? I'm with Steve a little, like, I see both sides. I'm on the fence here. Looking at future land use, I don't like that one little pocket of yellow of single housing there on the, along Hyman, but boy, I sure see how it makes sense to combine those two lots and put up some multifamily there.
Well, we've got multifamily on three sides of that property now. One is contiguous with that property. The other two are obviously across the street. One across Second Street, one across Hyman. But it certainly seems to be an area of multifamily as opposed to single family.
And I don't know many single-family residents that would move into a neighborhood that's surrounded by multifamily and apartments. So it'd be kind of detrimental to keep it as an R1.
Okay, we ready to vote then? Let's go ahead and vote on this. So the motion stands to recommend to council approving the rezone of this property at 1290 Hyman, parcel R33798, lot 4, 4A, and 4C, block 35, from R1 to R3. All those in favor? Justin Ellison, are you in favor?
Yes.
Bruce?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
And I'm in favor as well. So that motion passes, and we will recommend to council that they go ahead and approve this rezone request. And I believe you have another on the table, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. That is correct.
Okay, so let's move on to that. So the next item is case number RZ 2021-004. Applicant Jeff Brady is requesting a rezone of properties located at 1270 Hutman, parcel R33799, lot 5, block 35, Southside Addition, to the city of Stephenville, York County, Texas, from R1 single family to R3 multifamily. Steve, do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am, my comments would be identical to the previous case.
Thank you, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Brady, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, this is the lot with the house on it.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, I assume we're going the same way on this, so is there a motion out there from someone?
I recommend to council approval of RZ 2021-004.
I'll
Okay, so
second.
that's a motion by Brian and a second by
Bruce.
Bruce. Thank you, sir. Okay, so the motion stands that we recommend to council approval of the rezone of this property from R1 to R3. Justin Ellison, are you in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Bruce DeLater?
Yes.
Brian Leslie?
Yes.
And myself, I'm in favor, so this motion passes as well. So, Mr. and Mrs. Brady, your next stop is to go to the city council's next meeting where they will hear this. They will make the final decision on this. We are recommending to them that they approve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Okay, the next item on our agenda is case number RZ 2021-005. Applicant Bo Mayo is requesting a rezone of Properties located at 820 Alexander, parcel 433804, lot 7B, block 35, Southside Edition, to the city of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from R1 single family to R3 multifamily. Steve, what you got for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on this particular case, the comprehensive plan designates future land use to be single family. So normally we'd be inclined to say that we would recommend denial on this particular request. However, you may recall the commission recently passed a rezone request for properties to the south of this parcel along Alexander. And those parcels now have B2 and R3 zoning. They are just directly south of Mr. Mayo's property. This property is also along Alexander, which we have designated as a minor arterial when we look at the thoroughfare plan. So when we consider these facts in relation to the previously heard cases on Hyman, the biggest distinction here is that we have a property that's facing a minor arterial with properties in the immediate vicinity that have similar or even increased zoning over the R3. So the property in question is referenced here on this particular map. As you can see, directly south, there's already an R3 property. And then to the south of that is the parcel that was recently rezoned to R3. And then to the south of that, we have the B2 zoning for the project that is going to involve some storage building warehouses on the corner of Alexander and 377. If we also look at the properties in the area with the current zoning, we have R3 across the street from the property in question. As you can see here, 820 is the property that's outlined in blue directly to the south. To the east, and then, well, those two properties would be the ones that are R3 zoning, of course, and then B2 to the south of that. Future land use, yes, this particular parcel is designated as R1, but again, with the existing uses that are in place, the reality of this becoming future land use at this magnitude has diminished somewhat greatly. With that, staff would have no objection to the R3 designation on this property. That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Is Mr. Mayo here with us tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayo, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would plan to improve the property. What I'd like to do with it is build a small townhome project. Be two one-story buildings with 6 to 8 units per building. And then I'd like to put a privacy fence all the way around the property. Of course, there'd be new curbs and gutters and sidewalks, new landscaping, new trees. I believe it'd be an improvement to the area. I think it'll be a big improvement, and I appreciate y'all's consideration on it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Mayo? Okay, I'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, does anybody have a motion for me?
I'll make the motion, we approve the request.
Okay, Bruce made the motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
I heard a couple seconds there. Sounded maybe like Justin?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I was one.
Okay, we'll give it to Justin. Do we need to discuss this? I feel like this is perfectly fine myself. I have no objection. Anybody else want to talk about it? All right, let's go ahead and vote. So the motion stands to recommend to council approving rezoning this property at 820 Alexander, parcel R3804, lot 7B, block 35, from R1 to R3. Are you in favor, Justin Ellison?
Yes.
Are you in favor of Bruce DeLater?
I am.
Are you in favor of Brian Leslie?
Yes.
And I too am in favor. So this motion passes, and we recommend to council that this property be rezoned. So Mr. Mayo, I know you know this, but your next stop is city council, where they will make the final decision. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is case number SC 2021-001, abandonment of the 800 block of North Lillian Avenue. Steve?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, thank you. The city has previously abandoned North Lillian Avenue from Washington Street to Shirley Street, which was then sold to Tarleton State University. The university has now acquired the remaining private residences on Lillian Avenue and has asked the city to consider the sale of the final block of Lillian between Shirley and Fry. Staff is agreeable with this request. Chapter 95 of the Code of Ordinances specifies the process for a street closure and sale of the property, and it does require that the council initiate action, which they did on February 2nd, 2021, and the process outlined in Chapter 95 now requires that a public hearing be held by the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration. Staff is asking that we do move forward with a recommendation to City Council to proceed with the closure and sale of the street that was previously discussed. If we look at the presentation, the staff report in your packet, we have consulted with other departments in the city. Our Public Works Department has stated that an existing 12-inch diameter water line runs parallel to Lillian Street, and therefore we would need to maintain an easement and have an easement continued to be granted to us by Tarleton State University. There's also a 6-inch diameter water line that runs parallel to Shirley Street, so we again would have to be able to retain an easement to maintain those property lines. Development Services has no additional comments. Police had no additional comments. Fire did say that we would need to ask Tarleton State to make certain that the property had removable ballards so that they could have access to gain control and access to the property in the event of a call. The estimated value of this particular project is undetermined at this point, but we would, under the guidelines of Chapter 95, request that Tarleton State University have an appraisal done pursuant to the rules of Chapter 95, and then we would move forward with the council consideration. The advantages to this, closing the 800 block of North Lillian between Shirley and Fry, include the transfer of the maintenance of the pavement and the sanitary utility that would be the sole provider or the sole customer, which would be Tarleton State University. We see no disadvantages associated with the sale of this property, the closure and sale. So the alternatives of the P&Z tonight would be to recommend the City Council abandon the street as initiated, or alternatively recommend that the City Council terminate the initiated action and not abandon the street as presented. There is a map provided in your packet that illustrates where this particular portion of Lillian falls in relation to the campus itself. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve? Okay, then let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of abandoning this street? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against abandoning this street? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve.
Okay, Okay, Bruce is making the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it just so we can discuss it.
All right, so that's Brian is making a second. Okay, so Brian, it sounds like you are maybe not on board?
I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know. I mean, the rest of Lillian is shut down to the south, but I kind of agree with the fire department's concerns as far as it being accessible for them in the event of a fire. But I'm also looking at Shirley Street as an alternative way to get out of there in an emergency as well. I don't know. It's just a concern I have.
Okay, but to be fair, they weren't saying, that they weren't disagreeing with doing this. They simply said they needed bollards that were removable.
Right. And I also look at what they've done with the remaining part of Lillian, and I don't know if a fire truck can get down through there or not, but there's not a lot of buildings like there is at that point of Lillian. And I know that this is a dated map because most of the structures to the east of Lillian have already been demolished. And so I think all it is now is a parking lot, but if that's all it is, then I don't see any other objections.
Yeah, I myself, I don't have any objections to this. I'm fine with it. Justin, do you have anything you want to add? Any concerns?
Well, just in general, I was one of the people that thought we shouldn't have given away the streets of Tarleton back in the day. And I don't know, it just doesn't exactly feel right to abandon the street to give it to the university. And
Well,
the fire department, sorry, what was that?
They're selling it. They wouldn't be giving it.
Well, still, I just feel that in general, it doesn't really feel right to me. I don't really have any further comments beyond that, though.
Okay. Okay. Bruce, do you have any?
Well, it's surrounded on all sides by college property. I see no need in maintaining city ownership of it. We'd certainly get rid of a cost item that that probably very few people use in the city that are not associated with the university.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Bruce, and I apologize for my dogs.
I might make it
I feel like this, go ahead.
I might make an amendment, if that's possible, is that the university maintain it as an emergency thoroughfare and not develop it for any other purposes other than an emergency thoroughfare, if that's possible.
I don't know, but Steve, what would your thoughts be on that? Would that be something that we need to identify or something at a council level they would address?
Well, I think with any future development, if there was anything in relation to this particular street that cuts across from Fry to Shirley, one thing about Tarleton State University is they are very good about contacting us and working with us on their plan reviews, even though they are a state entity and really not required to always follow the local regulations. So I do believe that if there was any future development that related to changing this from the street that it is, that they would consult with city staff first. One thing that I do see is that this currently allowing traffic to cut across the campus could be a student safety issue. And so I don't know what exactly is driving the request, but as we look at the Tarleton campus and other areas on campus, we see that they have taken this type of approach in the past. So again, staff doesn't have any real objection other than requesting that there would be removable bollards both at Shirley and Fry Street for fire access.
Okay, well, I'm inclined to agree with staff on this. I mean, we'll purchase it, they will purchase it from the city, so the city will get reimbursed for the cost. The city will no longer have to maintain the property. They won't have to maintain any of the issues surrounding that property. So that seems reasonable because it's being used strictly by Tarleton anyway. So it makes sense to, transfer that responsibility and that expense to them. That makes sense to me. And I agree, as long as we have proper fire access, I don't personally have a problem with it. So are we ready to vote on this, everyone? All right, the motion that currently stands is to recommend to City Council that we abandon the 800 block of North Lillian Avenue. Justin Ellison, are you in favor?
No.
No. Bruce DeLater, are you in favor?
Yes, I am.
Brian Leslie, are you in favor?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm in favor, yes. So that passes 3-1, a sweep vote. So this will go forth to council with recommendation to abandon, and it'll go forth with the development office's request that bollards be placed on either side to allow for fire access, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, moving on. Case number SC 2021-002, abandonment of the undeveloped portion of Shirley Street. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff was contacted by an individual interested in purchasing and developing an undeveloped portion of Shirley Street. This individual has purchased a property on the northeast end of the undeveloped property. The street under consideration contains a 6-inch diameter sanitary sewer line. There are no plans to develop the street as it intersects with the railroad, and there is not an existing crossing. The authority to close the street again falls under Chapter 95 with the same process as previously discussed. We did consult with other departments. Public Works indicated that there is a municipal utility easement that must be retained for the existing 6-inch diameter sanitary sewer line that cuts across Shirley Street at the right-of-way. No objections from police, fire, or development services. We do have an estimated value for this particular portion of Shirley Street, and that is estimated at $15,882.78 for the full 40-foot right-of-way, and then half of the right-of-way would be $7,941.39. An exhibit of the property is listed below. We have a map that shows the portion that is being requested for consideration. There is water and sewer, and again, there is a 6-inch sanitary line that traverses the property, which would require us to retain the easement as previously mentioned. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions related to this particular request.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions for Steve?
Yeah, when I went out and looked at this piece of property, it appeared that approximately half of the length was still open to vehicular traffic. Although it was not paved, it still appeared that it was in use by vehicles from time to time.
Yes, sir. And
Approximately right here.
yes, sir. That may be the case, and as we indicated, the individual that has purchased this undeveloped portion of property without this will be landlocked. And so this street, even though it is public access right now, the only access that it would be granting, again, because we have no intentions to ever traverse the railroad at this particular location, we do not have a crossing allotted to us. The only access that this would provide would be for people on Paddock Street, those parcels that face Paddock Street that may be traversing this Shirley Street area to cut across to the backside of their properties, which is now a private property from the person that purchased this particular undeveloped portion. And again, without this sale of this property, his parcel will be landlocked.
Thank you, Steve. are there any other questions for Steve? All right, let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here? Well, first I should ask, do we have a name of the person who is involved? It looks like we don't. It's just the abandonment. So, okay, so well, let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this abandonment? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this abandonment? Okay, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, can I get a motion so that we can discuss?
I move that we recommend to council approval of SC 2021-002.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so Bragg made the motion and Bruce made the second. Do we need to discuss this? I'm fine with this myself. It seems to make sense. It's the only way this guy's gonna have access to his property, and it's not being used otherwise. Does anybody have anything they want to add? All right, let's go ahead and vote. So the motion stands to recommend to council approving the abandonment of the undeveloped portion of Shirley Street. Justin Allison, are you in favor?
Yes.
Bruce DeLater, are you in favor?
Yes, I am.
Brian Leslie, are you in favor?
Yes.
And I myself am in favor. So we will recommend to council approving the abandonment of the undeveloped portion of Shirley Street. Moving on. Case number SV 2021-001. I know this says applicant's Mike's West Side Rental, but I know that that is actually not the correct name, right? There's something in here later that says it's not, it's the owner of a development company who's the actual requesting property here. Requesting a subdivision waiver from section 155.6.11 sidewalk along Country Road 257 Peach Orchard, located at parcel R23789 lot 2 block 1, Excel's addition to the city of Stephenville, York County, Texas. And then I think this last bit isn't meant to be here, from R1 to R3, right, Steve?
That is correct, ma'am, and I thought I had removed that from this report, and I guess I failed to upload the correct document afterwards.
Okay, so this is just a waiver for sidewalk.
Yes, ma'am. The sentence should end after Erath County, Texas.
Gotcha. Okay, Steve, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you may recall, I'm sure the Commission recalls previous request relating to this particular property, and it was for a sidewalk waiver along Highway 377. This parcel has frontage on 377, but it also runs parallel to Peach Orchard on the east side of the property. So it was actually during that P&Z hearing that we discovered that there would be additional waiver requests necessary for the development of this property, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight. So the applicant was recently approved for the waiver for the sidewalk along Washington Highway 377, and this property, as we stated previously, has current zoning of B2 retail and commercial, with future land use as commercial. In your packet, I've included the subdivision ordinance relating to sidewalks and the waiver process. And as a staff representative, I would like to call the attention to paragraph F, which is the subdivision waiver criteria. And it speaks of what is necessary in order for the Planning and Zoning Commission to actually grant a waiver for sidewalks, curb, and gutters under this particular process. An undue hardship must be present, and it is important to note that an undue hardship is not simply the cost of the development itself. And so with that, I would ask that you take into consideration the applicant's presentation that will follow mine. And as a representative of city staff, it is important that we recommend that this request be denied for sidewalk, curb and gutter. Those would be two of the requests along this particular street, which is Peach Orchard. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve?
There are currently no sidewalks along this street at any point. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is a school to the south of this property, and it was developed without sidewalk. To the south of this property and just outside of our city limits, but within the ETJ, is a 100-acre plus parcel that I believe will eventually be slated for development, and I believe that would be for single-family use. So currently, absolutely concur that there are no improvements, but with the development and the subdivision ordinance that is in place, the intent behind that is to allow for development of these improvements as we bring businesses into the area. Any type of development on any undeveloped property is to adhere to the subdivision requirements, and then, of course, in this case, although it doesn't exist now, with future development, the desire would be to have those improvements for the persons that utilize these properties in the future.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the owner of the property is here tonight to speak with us.
Yes, ma'am. We have a representative here, Mr. Burt Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, would you like to go ahead and address the commission? And
Absolutely, thank you. And I'll be quick because I'm the last on the agenda and we all want to go home. So it's, and I hate to say it, but it's same song, second verse from October. It's good to see you again in person, not via Zoom. But our request is put very well by Steve that what would an undue hardship be besides money? Maybe it hurts my back if I've got to dig that out by hand, maybe. But the site, I have some pictures that are probably in your packet that just show that to the north of our property, it's going to be almost impossible to connect if that neighbor was to ever have to put curb and gutter in or sidewalk on Peach Orchard. Also, it is worth noting our development on this property is only going to touch 40 feet of Peach Orchard, and it's for a private entrance. It's just for our delivery drivers to use that only. Not, it won't be a public entrance. The rest of that parcel is actually for sale. We have no intentions of developing that entire piece for Mike's West Side Rental. So as far as Peach Orchard goes, I know we have Highway 377 request as well, but for Peach Orchard Drive, just given what's in place and then the road around it, it would be a sidewalk to nowhere and curb and gutter that could not connect north from my, just from the street width and utility easements that are in the way.
thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Thompson?
Yes, where do, you say you're not going to develop this entire property? It looks like an L, with the top of the L being along 377. Is that going to be your main access point?
Yes, sir.
377?
377 will be our main access point, yes, sir. Public and for employees.
Okay. So you're saying delivery trucks are actually going to have to, if they're coming from the city of Stephenville, they're going to have to proceed further down 377 and make a U-turn
Yes,
to
and
come back?
we're okay with that. This was mainly a convenience for our in-house delivery truck. We have one delivery truck. So that if they were leaving our property and we're gonna head east, they would be at a stop sign there at 377 and could turn with the stop sign. Or if they headed west, they would not have to leave and do a U-turn to go west. They could just make a left turn. Also, it's worth noting that the water to that site is going to come from Peach Orchard and go and follow that private drive down, if you will, to the development. So our thought was, since we're going to have to bring utilities down that anyway and have machines there, it would be easy to go ahead and put a road in for that. So it'd be about a 40-foot wide entrance is all that it would be. And again, just private use only.
So if you come out on Peach
Thank you, sir.
Orchard, as I recall, you can proceed directly across the eastbound lanes of 377 to go west.
You can, yes, sir.
Can you also then turn left if you're going west on 377, left onto Peach Orchard?
The delivery drivers could. And
But
then-
is that now also how the John Deere dealer is accessed if you're coming from the city?
Yes,
Who is
sir.
on the other side of Peach Orchard?
I believe so. I don't know if they have a 377 entrance or not, but I do know they have multiple entrances off of Peach Orchard, yes.
Okay. Let's move on. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Thompson? All right, thank you, sir. Let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this waiver request? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this waiver request?
Madam Chair, we have one person wishing to testify.
Okay, please go ahead, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rita Friels. I have a home and property directly across from this development area. I really came because I thought it was on the agenda that this was gonna be changing zoning, that it was a zoning request. And that, but I can say that one of the issues is it's a one-lane road right where, and I don't know what kind of truck you have that, was gonna make that, but I can tell you right now, the traffic on this little dead-end road is horrendous because of the school and all of the, and so I understand what you're needing, which is, access to be able to go west or to go east. And so, and the curb and gutter on this whole piece is gonna eventually connect to the school's curb and gutter, so I don't have a comment about that in the sense that it's all gonna probably go that way. If you do sell it and somebody develops it, it probably is gonna curb and gutter there. But, I mainly have trouble with adding any more traffic. And I'll be back here again if somebody buys this piece and wants access from Peach Orchard. If they will give access, if they sell this and all the access comes off 377, it's not an issue. But as the handout that I gave you, it's a dead-end road. We have one lane section that's about 75 yards. There's 71 students currently, but that doesn't count the 30 or 35 staff members at the school. The truck traffic from John Deere and Reynolds is horrendous. But just all the traffic on the road, I call the city to repair the road. At least every 2 or 3 months, there's huge potholes, from just all this traffic on a road that wasn't designed for this much traffic. So, I can just say that it seems to be a better solution is to make sure everything goes outside of Peach Orchard. But I understand if this is not gonna be if this is gonna be a private road, I just know that there's gonna be public people that come to your rental that are gonna go out that back way, or they're gonna come in that way. I don't know. I'm just, very concerned about the amount of traffic. And it's kind of on a blind corner, in the sense of how they're gonna enter from the property onto the road. So safety-wise, it's a problem too. In that regard, they would have to be very careful pulling out when someone's coming in. And people have to stop when other people are coming this direction. Like two cars can't, they could, but it's very close to the fence, you know, if you
Yes.
drive that way.
Thank you very much for your input. I totally take your point that this is a safety issue. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can really address right here because, you know, we're just hearing these curb and gutter and sidewalk issues. But
Yeah.
I do apologize that you obviously saw this as multifamily and thought, oh heck. we're gonna-
Yeah, I was freaking out over the multifamily, so.
I get it. I do. Thank you very I appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
on.
I apologize for
Thank
that, ma'am.
It's okay. I got to listen to all this good stuff.
You got to join in your civic duty today.
Yes.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else out here who wishes to speak against this waiver request? All right, then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, can we get a motion so that we can discuss?
I move to deny SV 2021-001.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Is that Brian made the motion and was that Bruce who seconded?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go through your logic?
Well, it's kind of like what Steve was saying. Eventually, there's going to more than likely be a single-family subdivision back there. There is a school right there, and the amount of traffic that is on that road is going to need to have a sidewalk for access for pedestrian when that does develop. And if the developer is going to be selling off the remainder of the property not in use, and it does turn into housing subdivision or whatever, then you'll need to have access there as well. So I think it's just a good idea, since it's going to be a new setup, that we just start from ground zero with a sidewalk and go, since we're going to go ahead and enforce the curb and gutter, obviously, but it's one less expense later on when the city does improve that street for the higher volume of traffic, that's one less expense that the city will have.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. Anyone else have anything they want to add, or shall we go ahead and vote?
This particular case, we're voting specifically on the sidewalk right now, right? That's,
That is correct.
yes, okay.
Correct. This is only on the sidewalk, only on Peach Orchard. Are we ready to? Okay, the motion stands that we recommend denying to council this waiver request for sidewalks on Peach Orchard. Justin Allison, do you agree that we should deny this request?
No.
No. Bruce, do you agree that we should deny this request?
Aye.
Yes. Brian, do you agree that we should deny this request?
Yes.
And I agree that we should deny this request. So we will recommend to council denial of this request. Mr. Thompson, as you know, we are not the final word here, and you will need to attend the next city council meeting and make your case with them, and they will make the final decision. All right, let's move forward because I know we've got several of these. Okay, next up, case number SB 2021-002. Applicant Mike's West Side Rental is requesting a subdivision waiver from section 155.6.04 M1 curb and gutter along County Road 257 Peach Orchard, located at parcel R23789, lot 2, block 1, Excels addition to the city of Stephenville, Eric County, Texas, period, not R1 to R3. Again, that needs to be marked out, correct, Steve?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct, as you had previously pointed out, and as I stated, I thought I had corrected that. So again, Mrs. Frills, my apologies to you for taking your time tonight. This case is basically identical. The only variation here is that we're talking specifically about curb and gutter along Peach Orchard. So my comments relating to this particular case would be identical to the previous case, with the exception that we're simply discussing curb and gutter at this time. That's the end of my comments, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything that you want to add? Any wish to further your case?
Forget what you just voted. And remember, and this is a new case. It's a new case. No, I would just add the same as well. But I'm here for any questions you may have for this one and the next one.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this waiver request? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this waiver request? All right, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that the request be denied, but with conditions attached.
Okay, what conditions?
Condition B that when the city rebuilds this street or expands this street, and only then will the denial go into effect, that at the present time, they would not be subject to having to place curb and gutter. Because obviously the street needs improvement, especially if there's going to be additional development further down the street, that the curb and gutter requirement be held in abeyance until the street is improved.
Steve, can we do that?
That's a very good question, Madam Chair. I think to comment on that, as we move forward with the development for this particular parcel, there will be a discussion with Mike's West Side and Mr. Thompson regarding the improvements of Peach Orchard for the, especially along the stretch of that parcel that faces or I guess parallels Peach Orchard. But as far as recommending the waiver with conditions, I certainly think we can bring that forward to council for consideration, but we'd have to defer to them on if they would move forward with that. I believe I'd have to consult with our city attorney and see if those conditions could be put in place as Mr. DeLauder is suggesting. I don't dispute the fact that it may be a great idea, but I just don't know if legally if that's something the commission can put on this particular request.
Okay, so we could recommend to deny it, but then add a suggestion to council that they consider holding it in abeyance?
I absolutely believe that would be something that we could proceed with, and if that's action taken by the commission, I'll consult with our city attorney prior to bringing it to the council.
All right. Bruce, is that acceptable to you?
If it cannot be held in abeyance until the street is improved, then I would make a motion that the waiver be approved. So I don't know how you want to proceed on that, but I think only with those conditions would I make a motion to deny it.
One way or another, and we'll discuss and vote, and then go from there. We'll see where everybody stands. So if you want to make a motion to approve the waiver, and somebody wants the second, you don't ultimately have to vote that way.
Then I would make a motion to approve it, but also with conditions attached that that approval would only exist as long as the street was not improved. When the street is improved, that the approval will be removed.
I think Steve is suggesting that we can't actually do that, that we need to make a decision on this waiver one way or another and recommend to council our suggestion that it be held in abeyance, but that we can't actually put a condition on the approval or disapproval of the waiver. Is that accurate, Steve?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that's to be true. Again, I would need to if the commission moves forward with the conditions, then I'll consult with our city attorney and see if it can proceed to council that way. But I strongly suggest that the commission only consider approval or denial one way or the other. And then if it is approval or denial, then the conditions can be discussed at council at the recommendation of P and Z.
In that case, I'll make a motion that this particular case be tabled until those questions can be answered.
I believe we're not allowed to table this. Am I right, Steve?
Again, that's a good question. I believe that once it makes it to the agenda and you have a quorum present, then it is required to be acted upon.
Right, we have to make a decision on this.
Alternatively, if we want to take a short recess, I can see if I can get a direct answer from our city attorney if I can make contact with him. That's the only other option I can think of at the moment.
The rest of the commissioners, are you feeling similarly uncertain on this?
Well, honestly, I'd be okay with, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just realized I can't introduce a discussion until we've had a motion. Perhaps would somebody else like to make a motion? If Bruce does not make a motion, Justin or Brian could make a motion and we could go from there.
Madam Chair, if you will,
Yes, ma'am.
you'll need a second on that motion. If not, if you don't receive a second, that motion will die and you can start over with a new motion.
Okay, so, you're right, Bruce did start a motion where he suggested the motion was to deny with condition. So do we have a second on that, or will that motion die? Okay, so that motion will die without a second. So, does somebody else have a new motion to propose?
I do have one question before we make a motion. Could we go ahead and do the phone call without a motion?
I think that'd be the pleasure of the board. Madam Chair, that's certainly something I can attempt to make happen if that's the desire.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't want to put too much time on this as it's already 7 o'clock, but if we want to, shall we say 10 minutes? Is that sufficient, Steve?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's give it 10 minutes and then log back on.
Y'all can just wait and we'll be back just as
Just wait?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll just wait. We all here? Let's go ahead and reconvene this meeting. Steve, would you like to report back, or were you able to get a hold of the city attorney?
Madam Chair, I was unable to make contact this evening. However, we were discussing this during the recess, and it was brought to my attention that if you take action tonight to either approve or deny, and the decision is to deny, there is an alternative process that the applicant could approach staff with, and that would be the consideration of establishing an escrow account, which would basically accomplish the same thing that Mr. DeLauder has brought forward. So with the escrow account, the applicant could establish an escrow account, and those monies would be held until the property is developed, at which time the improvements would be made. And if those developments are not made in X number of years, then the escrow account is returned to the applicant. So that may be an alternative that could be explored at staff level if the applicant so desires, if you make a recommendation to deny tonight.
Okay, but we have no influence upon that escrow. We can't add anything to our motion, right? We just simply have to approve or deny, correct?
It would just be something that the applicant would approach us, being city staff, at his own will and leisure, if he so desired. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, commissioners, with that in mind, can we get a motion?
I would like to recommend to council denial of SV 2021-002.
Thank you, that was Brian making the motion. Do I have a second? What, Steve, I'm not allowed to second, right?
I believe you can when there's no other second involved in the discussion.
All right, I'll go ahead and second. Judging from the silence from my other two, though, I'm wondering how this vote is going to go. My feeling, well, let's let somebody else talk. Brian, do you want to talk about why you think we ought to deny this?
For the same reasons as the sidewalk, I think that once this area is developed, since it is a fledgling area, it will need to start having the sidewalks, the curb and gutters, and all the improvements of a new development. And as far as our discussion goes with what we can do, that's about all I'm willing to say at the moment. But I would like to entertain the idea of holding said developments, but that would be at a council level and a council decision. So for our purposes, that's where I want to be.
Thank you, Brian. I'm in agreement with you. Bruce, do you want to speak any further on your thoughts on this?
I've basically said my piece. I think we need some kind of contingency either way.
Do you like the escrow concept?
I like the escrow concept that if that street is not developed or not improved within a certain amount of time, that the escrow account be returned to the landowner. That as long as that escrow account is in effect, he's paid the money, but doesn't need to perform the construction. But with inflation being what it is and what it may become, is the escrow account going to be sufficient to complete the job when and if the city improves the street?
Okay, well, that I guess ultimately that's not our.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
that's what goes into my consideration of how I vote on this.
Yeah. Justin, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, just in general, I'm kind of against requirements like this. It's just my personal feeling. But beyond that, I don't have anything else to comment tonight.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this. So the motion that stands is that we recommend to council denying the waiver for curb and gutter on Country Road 257 Peach Orchard.
Madam
Justin
Chair,
Ellis- Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The applicant has asked that I ask you if you would consider any additional comments from him before taking action.
Certainly, Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
The development is really on the 377 side for Mike's West Side Rental. If, just a point of question, if the entrance that we were gonna put on Peach Orchard was removed altogether, would the curb and gutter and sidewalk still be that because it's a one-piece property that was platted in '06? Or is this mainly because of the 40-foot entrance that we were gonna put in, that's what then triggers the curb and gutter and sidewalk?
Madam Chair, if I may respond.
Yes, please.
The subdivision ordinance requires these improvements along any roadside frontage, so it would be for the entire length along Peach Orchard for this particular property, as well as the entire length along 377.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this. So again, the motion stands that we deny this waiver request for curb and gutter at County Road 257 Peach Orchard. I'm just going to go through this one by one. Justin Allison, do you agree that we should deny this request?
No.
No. Brian Leslie, do you agree we should deny this request?
Yes.
Bruce, do you agree that we should deny this request?
No.
No. And I will agree, yes, that we should deny this request. So we currently have a tie vote, 2-2. So Steve, will this simply go to council with our tie vote?
Madam Chairman, typically in these situations, your chair doesn't vote unless it's for a tiebreaker. I'll leave that up to you, how y'all have done procedure in the past. I did just want to bring that up, that usually your position is a tie-breaking vote, but that's up to you.
Yeah. We've had a number of issues on this position on whether it's a voting position, and city council has gone back and forth, and nobody's ever made a definitive decision on that in all the 7 years that I've been on here. Regardless, if this would still come down to a 2-2 split, because I would be voting with Brian. Because we only have 4 of us here today. So normally we should have 7. So how do we proceed? Steve, do we recommend to council at a 2-2?
That's uncharted territory, I believe, for us, Madam Chair. I'm fortunate enough to have our city secretary in the room with us tonight, which is not the norm, and I believe that even she is somewhat questioning where we go from here.
As a quasi-governing body, I'm not sure that y'all can leave something like this. So I think y'all will have to find a compromise among yourselves until you can get a majority
We
vote,
have to
one
make
way
a
or the other.
decision. Oh, battle it out.
I'm not an attorney and I do not make legal recommendations, but my professional opinion would be y'all probably need to have some sort of recommendation one way or the other.
All right.
I will make a motion then that this be removed to a subsequent meeting, not next week, but the following meeting at the earliest.
I believe we are not allowed to table an item, correct? Steve or Stacy, I believe we must make a decision on this.
Is there a time limit? Is there a statutory time limit?
There is a time limitation on how, once the applicant makes application, then we have 30 days to make a decision where it's automatically approved. With the inclement weather, I think the clock stopped as we had to reschedule. But based on what we decide tonight, we have to either render a decision or reconvene at a special meeting for such decision to be made before the 30 days expires.
Steve, can we get the information that we need to do about a conditional motion before we meet next week?
Yes, sir, but this particular case will not be able to be on next week's meeting due to the legal posting requirements. Madam Chair, the applicant is wishing to approach.
Please, Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
I'll be quick. This may help in your decision. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. These plans, this project was actually brought to the city pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, we pushed pause on it just to see what was going to happen. We brought it back to life, which is when I addressed you the first time in October. I think it would be important to note that our engineering firm had received 2 reviews from the city's reviewer, Freeze and Nichols, 1 from Public Works, and 1 from the city engineer reviewing our documents that did not show curb and gutter or sidewalk, and there were never any notations that came back saying that that needed to be added. So perhaps with that having not been added or suggested, that those engineers saw that the site just wasn't conducive for those 2 items. So if we want to throw them under the bus, I thought I'd just throw that to you guys as a commission. So just add that note, please.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Thompson.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any time constraints here as to how and when you make your decision to proceed?
We're ready to start, and we have, and I know it's not a reason to ask this, but we had, having stopped it, we had to rebid this whole project, and costs are exorbitant right now with supply chain issues and things like that. And so Steve was gracious to give us the opportunity to come back in March, before Snowvid happened, and do the escrow thing then as well. But the escrow amount for those 3 items, our 25% was a large amount. And given, again, the road conditions for both these sites, the development not happening, and then another point I would want to add as well, Commissioners, is that, we've dedicated a 50-foot right-of-way. In our development meeting, it was noted that on the west side of the property, that there's hopes for a main thoroughfare to go through there at some point. And we have been more than happy, it's already showed on the plans that this 50-foot right-of-way will be given to the city. We're not asking for fair market value. We're not asking, we were going to dedicate our 50-foot. We were able to put our development in and have that be there, and we thought that was a fair trade, if you will, for those. Again, given the location of the site and the conditions of the roads, whether we're talking 377 or Peach Orchard.
Okay, as I look at this map and look at the scale on the map, it appears that the width of the property on 377 is approximately 250 feet. And you've offered the city 50 of that 250 feet?
That's correct.
For a street?
Yes, we were told when we went to a pre-development meeting, this is pre-Steve, that they showed me the map, that there was a future road that would be a north-south thoroughfare that would go right down our property line, and that we would be required to give 50 foot. The other neighbors to the west would give 50. They didn't know when that road would go in. It may not be in our lifetime, but they said it may be. So we went back to our engineer and said, can we make our property fit, losing 50 foot of frontage, if you will, all the way south to the back of the property? And we were able to do so. And it's noted on all of our plans from the engineers that everyone has already reviewed, that 50 foot's there.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think we are getting a bit in the weeds here. This is not, pertinent to the discussion we're having right now. What we need to do is we need to make a decision and go forward on this. Is anybody inclined to alter their vote? I'm pretty certain Justin is not. Brian, you feel pretty solid?
I think that since we're in kind of an uncharted territory here on this one piece, I'll go ahead and change my vote and then let the council be aware that
Yeah.
this is a little hiccup that we had.
Hash this. Do we need to have a new motion and a new vote?
I would say so, just to make sure that it's accurate. So I'll move that we approve SV 2021-003 or 002.
I'll second.
All right, so that's Brian making a motion to approve, that's Bruce making a second to approve. Justin Allison, are you in favor of the motion to approve this waiver request on Peach Orchard for Kirk?
Yes.
Yes. Bruce, are you in favor of this motion to approve this waiver request?
Yes.
Brian, are you in favor of this motion to approve this waiver request?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I would be a no if we're counting me. But as it stands, this will go forward to council with our recommendation that we approve, we recommend that they approve this waiver request. But I assume, Steve, that you will fill them in on the discussion.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, I will.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's move on. We've got, is it just one more item?
That's
Steve?
correct, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're almost at the finish line, guys. Hang on. Okay, case number SB 2021-003. Applicant's Mike's West Side Rental is requesting a subdivision waiver from section 155.6.04 M1 curb and gutter along Highway 377, located at parcel R23789, Lot 2, Block 1, Excels addition to the city of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, and we are Xing out the last bit. Steve.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. This request is for curb and gutter along Washington. As you recall, the waiver request for sidewalk along Washington was approved. Therefore, the applicant will not have to install the sidewalk along Washington Highway 377. He is now asking for the same consideration for the curb and gutter along 377. Speaking with the Public Works Director, it's staff opinion that we do need to have this improvement installed. And if we look at some of the properties to the east along 377, there is curb and gutter with the exception to the business to the immediate east of Mike's West Side at the milk facility. It would be staff's recommendation that this request be denied. And that would conclude my comments.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm just grateful for your time. I know, I apologize, I had no idea. I guess I thought October was a good sign. I didn't know, but I'm grateful for whatever you decide. I really am. We're not going anywhere. We love this town.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody here who wishes to speak against this rezone?
I didn't know it was a rezone. I thought it was a waiver request.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired, guys. Okay, back it up. Stop, remove, back it up. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this waiver request? No? Anybody here who wishes to speak against this waiver request? All right, now I'm closing the public hearing. All right, commissioners, thoughts, feelings? Oh, first we need a motion before we do any thoughts and feelings.
I make a motion that the waiver request be approved.
Be approved. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Justin second. Your thoughts on this? Anybody?
I'm trying to recall the curb and gutter that is on the east end is part of the main highway, but as soon as you get past Orchard or whatever the street is,
And past Bramblett.
if past Bramlett's, it turns into a bar ditch system. Is that correct, Steve?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so at that point, the curb and gutter would be kind of mute, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm certainly not an engineer, so,
Well, looking at it from the way the highway department's already got it configured, that curb and gutter might become an issue, and the drainage that they already have is already sufficient, I feel like, so I kind of feel that this would be kind of a waste.
I certainly, I don't think that I can answer intelligently on, why the curb and gutter would be such a. I do know that I spoke with.
If it was there, I'm pretty sure on the west it's non-existent.
I spoke with
that's all.
the Public Works Director, and he, expressed that he would like to see the curb and gutter along 377, and I think that's for deterioration concerns related to the drainage from the properties.
Okay.
And getting up under the pavement. But again, that's a novice's opinion of a novice and not necessarily an engineer. So I
Okay.
certainly appreciate your comments and understand the hesitation behind your action.
Anyone else have anything they want to add? My personal thought is I would deny this request. I think we need curb and gutter that whole way, and we need to do whatever the work is to get it done. But I know we've run into this problem again and again with the question of the bar ditch and how do we handle it on these big roads. So looks like, this is going to get obviously kicked to council and they'll make the ultimate decision, but I'm kind of thinking I'm not going to win this one. So are you guys ready to vote?
Yes.
All right,
ma'am.
let's go ahead. So the motion stands that we approve this waiver request for curb and gutter on Highway 377. Justin Allison, do you agree that we should recommend to council approval of this curb and gutter waiver?
Yes.
Yes. Bruce, do you agree that we should recommend to council that we approve this waiver request for curb and gutter?
Yes, I do.
Brian Leslie,
Yes.
same question.
Yes, I
Yes.
do.
All right, and if we're counting me, I say no, but I don't know if I count.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'm going to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Thompson, this going on the council, we'll see how they decide. Good luck to you, sir. It is a very late night, and I appreciate you staying. I'm just scrolling, making sure that is the end of our agenda. It is the end of our agenda, but lucky us, we get to meet again next week.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I'd like
that's
to thank the staff for their work here tonight, too.
Yes, thank you, guys. It's a late night for you.
Thank you
too.
for indulging us.
All right, guys, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I already made it.
And so seconded.
I'm too tired. Okay. And there was a second too. I'm assuming that's a yes.
Yes.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. See y'all next week.